Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome on into the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan. Streaming online at 1069thefan.com and on the 1069 The Fan mobile app and live on YouTube. The Fan KLGN is where you can find myself and Eric Frandsen wearing our wonderful plaid button-up shirts. It's almost like we coordinate this.
There's shades of blue on both.
Yeah, mine's blue, his is purple. So
yes.
You can if you like plaid shirts, I guess switch over to YouTube. Otherwise, you can always listen to us. Just listen to us. Don't have to watch us on the 106.9 The Fan, 1390 AM, the mobile app, website, all that kind of fun stuff. If you want to chime in, have anything to say about any of the topics we have, feel free to text our Young Power Sports of Logan text line, 435-339-0321. We've had a lot of fantastic text interaction with our show the last couple of days. A lot of people very passionate, have a lot of things to say about Utah State's coaching search. We're not necessarily going to be done with that topic today. We're going to begin shifting a little bit more into some other topics as the news cycle rolls on. But let's kind of get into where it still kind of involves Jerrod Calhoun and Utah State's coaching search and Utah State's situation. And this was kind of the viral moment of the day. There wasn't really a huge one for today, but it was about as viral as things got for Utah State today. And that was Jerrod Calhoun, his comments during his introductory press conference with Cincinnati. He was introduced today, like a 40-minute press conference. All the typical stuff of an introductory press conference. And he was asked a question during this. So it was interesting, the kind of question that this came on. It'll add a little bit of context to something that Calhoun says in the middle of the clip, which we'll play in a second. But he was asked about players he would bring with him from Utah State. One of the reporters, because fans, they've already been picking through Utah State's roster, saying which players do we want? We think we're going to get these players.
Right.
They've typically gone after Mason Falslev, saying, well, we're going to have the Mountain West Player of the Year on our roster next year. They also mention Adlin Elamine as somebody. I mean, obviously, anyone who knows anything about Adlin Elamine wants him on their team's roster because of his potential. But one of the reporters asking Jerrod Calhoun, and his response had a bit more to it, where he said he was going to focus on his roster, although the main reason he said that is because he can't say anything about the portal yet because it hasn't opened.
Yeah, it's not open yet. Nobody's in the portal.
So,
but I will, before we hear the clip, I do want to say this. We've seen other coaches leave Utah State, but they haven't always just talked a lot about their time at Utah State. They spend their introductory press conference talking about themselves, their plan for the vision, for where they're at, the history of the institution that they're taking over, and they don't really talk too much about where they just were. And I appreciate that Jerrod Calhoun took some time to prop up Utah State and talk about the quality program that it was, while also illustrating the challenges it still has.
Yeah. And this comment about Utah State was, well, actually, to be honest, what he brought up wasn't really the question, but he brought it up anyway. He brought up Utah State before questions were even started and was favorable to, I don't think I can quote him exactly, but talking about his time at Utah State and remembering it fondly and saying, didn't want to leave, like the players, like the buy-in, all that kind of stuff. But here's the quote from Jerrod Calhoun, kind of the money quote from him earlier today. Let's make sure that I can play this properly and don't mess it up.
So Utah State is a top 30 job in America. It truly is. It's a place that has an incredible student body, 3,800 students every night. The players that are there will have to decide that. But I can tell you this, when we got the 9 seed, after winning 28 games and a regular season title and a tournament title, that was pretty tough.
So that was Jerrod Calhoun, again, talking about Utah State, where I know a lot of Cincinnati fans were like, oh, Utah State fans are going to be so mad about this, because he mentions them getting the 9 seed. He was like, he leads off the quote by saying that Utah State is a top 30 job in the country.
Yeah. He praises the program. It's a great job. It's a great institution. It has great fan support. But look, when the Cincinnati job came open, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion he was going to go.
Yeah.
It was going to be hard to keep him. But when Utah State, when the selection committee only awarded the Aggies with a 9 seed after what they did, I mean, it shouldn't be no surprise that Jerrod Calhoun's just throwing up his hands like, what else can we do?
Yeah.
Like, what else do you want from an institution like Utah State that has history, that won in the tournament just, the 2 years ago, that has a basketball conference that's really good, has a history of having success, and we won this conference. We won this conference tournament, and you only gave us a 9? Like, he could see that there was a hard ceiling that it was gonna be really hard for him to break through if he stayed at Utah State.
Yeah, I think that and there's, a budget aspect to it where it's like, if he was able to double his budget again at Utah State, he probably would be able to find a way to break through that ceiling, because there is a way to do it. And I know there's been some comments from people saying, well, like, Jerrod Calhoun was already planning on leaving before they got the 9 seed. So, like, that didn't sway his decision. But I do think that the writing was largely on the wall for the Aggies, even in January, February. They're not really looking at getting anything better than a 6 or a 7 seed, and only a 6 or a 7 seed if they manage to, like, win out. But, like, getting that, maybe a 7 seed was probably in the cards for the Aggies. Because if you look at KenPom rankings, and I mean, if you just line up the seeds based on your KenPom ranking, if you're the Aggies where they were ranked like 32 or 33 at the time of the selection committee made their decision, that's about where an 8 or a 9 seed is. But the Aggies at one point were 21 in KenPom. Like, they got up to dang near the top 20. And at that point, you're a 6 seed, maybe even a 5 seed. Now, the selection committee is not really going to, give Utah State a 5 seed, but let's say that Utah State doesn't get swept by UNLV. Take away one of the losses to Nevada or San Diego State there late in the season. Then suddenly the Aggies go into the NCAA tournament with like 32 wins.
Yeah, if it doesn't take to the very last game of the season to win the conference, when you had chances to lock it up for about a week and a half, and you kind of stumbled along the way, then maybe they do get a 7 seed.
Yeah.
But they struggled late in the season.
Yeah, and so like I don't want to completely dismiss Jerrod Calhoun's point, because it is valid to a degree. You look at Utah State's history. You look at the Mountain West. They have generally not been given favorable seeds. New Mexico last year won the regular season going away, and they got a 10 seed. Like, that was a dang good New Mexico team, and last year's conference was better than this year's, at least at the top. And New Mexico was clearly the best team in the conference, and they got a 10 seed. Same as the Aggies, who finished 3rd and only made it to the semifinal, made it as far as New Mexico did in the conference tournament. And Utah State, again, 1 year where they got an 8 seed, they were projected a 6 seed. They got the 8 seed. Like, this has been a consistent thing for the Aggies, where they cannot get a good seed in the NCAA tournament. And that's something that I think is going to impact coaches going forward. Because with Jerrod Calhoun, while, again, did he know that he was going to get a 9 seed? And, not necessarily. But I think that sentiment was part of his decision-making process, even if he didn't have all of the details in hand. He knew that the Mountain West was not necessarily going to get, like, he tried to, if you kind of go back, maybe hindsight is 2020 here, but go back and hear him trying to prop up the Mountain West, saying this is a 2 or 3 bid league, all these different teams that he thinks deserve to be in. But I think he knew that none of them were going to make it. He knew that his team wasn't necessarily going to get a good seed. And so I think that's something that mid-major coaches are going to be taking into consideration. They see what is happening with March Madness. This year, there were 4 mid-major at-large bids. There were 4 last year. Before then, there were consistently 5, 6, 7, 8 at-large mid-major bids. There were mid-majors that could get 4, 5, 6 seeds. There have been, I think, 2 teams in the last 3 years who have gotten better than a 7 seed. Gonzaga this year, Memphis last year. So teams are just not getting good seeds in the NCAA tournament. A lot of them are just getting 8, 9, 10, 11 seeds. You might get 1 or 2 that get above an 8 or a 9 seed. But mid-majors are not only being, seeing fewer at-large bids, they're seeing fewer good bids in the NCAA tournament. And that's something that Utah State, I think, has to solve. Because if Utah State can solve that issue of always getting a mediocre or not good seed in the NCAA tournament, that's something that can keep a coach here in Logan. It's kept, I think, Brian Dutcher in San Diego State. Yeah. They can get a big seed if they want. They've gotten 5, 6 seeds. They've gotten a 2 seed before.
That's what's helped Gonzaga.
Yeah, and Gonzaga, they've done the exact same thing. I mean, they got a 3 seed this year. So Utah State needs to find a way to break through that ceiling. Didn't happen in the Mountain West era. And so to me, I guess the question now is, can the Pac-12 solve that issue? Can it be part of the solution? Will the Pac-12 help the Aggies, or are they going to have to fight through it to a similar level as they were in the Mountain West? And that may be one of the biggest questions and most important questions as far as, is this Pac-12 experiment worth it?
Well, we've looked in the past in the Mountain West. This was a league that would routinely send 4 teams. There was a stretch there where every year at minimum they would send 4. And then one year they sent 6. And a year, several years back, they sent 5. So the Mountain West has always been a strong basketball conference. The Mountain West has normally been, more years than not, a conference that has really good basketball programs that do well in a national stage. This year, is it an anomaly or just the trend of how things are moving in college basketball? And I think your question is, moving to the Pac-12, does it get any better? And I think you do trim off some of the low end fruit of that would draw down the Mountain West. You don't have so much of that. You're still going to have some with Texas State and Fresno State right now. Washington State and Oregon State are struggling. They're not really that great right now, but the high end is still there, and it also provides an opportunity to go out and get more games to have a little bit more control of your own destiny in finding multi-team events, finding different interesting non-conference games, because you don't have as many conference games. So you have more flexibility in your non-conference schedule to build that up. But that's still dependent on who's the coach and what is his scheduling philosophy. Because just because you're in the Pac-12 doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a really good non-conference schedule. That's still up to the coach to figure that out.
Yeah, and I think as I went back, because we actually kind of went over this with, how good is the Pac-12 conference schedule versus how good is the future Mountain West. And mind you, at this point, there's not really a point in comparing it to the Mountain West, because that's just not a worthwhile comparison, because the Aggies are in the Pac-12 and that's just the way it is, and they aren't going to be able to stay in this current version of the Mountain West. So it's all about, is this Pac-12 going to be better than what they've had? And in a lot of ways, it's going to end up being similar in a lot of ways. Like, they'll have 4 quad, if we base it off of this year's net rankings, which, that's not the greatest indicator in the world, but it's the best we got.
That's what we have, yeah.
You get 4 quad 1 games next year, 2 against Gonzaga and away games at San Diego State, Boise State. Colorado State's close-ish, so maybe that's one that could flip to a quad 1 game. But you're looking at 4 to 5, I would say 3 to 5 quad 1 games, depending on how good the teams do. I think the real big hit is actually in the number of quad 2 games the Aggies will have. There's only 3 quad 2 games in the Pac-12 conference schedule based on this year's now rankings. They're 7 quad 3 and 2 quad 4. Whereas this year in the Mountain West, they had 9 quad 2 games in Mountain West play alone. So the Aggies, when I look at the Pac-12 schedule, I don't see a strong enough schedule to get the Aggies above where they've been. Is it going to keep them on the same level? Absolutely. You're going to have quad 1 games. You're going to get a quad 1A game against Gonzaga because that tends to be the thing that people look at these days is not just quad 1. They say, well, quad 1A, where it's like the top 25, or I forget where the exact line they draw is, but like they want you playing a top 30 team, not a team that's ranked 74th and you're playing them on the road.
Right.
They're going to view a game against Gonzaga better than a road game at Boise. And so that's an advantage the Aggies are going to pick up, where that's going to have a bit more weight. But the Pac-12 schedule is not really going to elevate them much beyond their conference schedule in the Mountain West, if it really does even elevate them beyond that. So where the Aggies have to be able to pick things up is in their non-conference schedule. And I know we've had this conversation over and over about how difficult it is. Nobody will schedule the Aggies. And it's like, look, at some point, just debase yourself and say, all right, we're going to play a road game at Ohio State. We're going to play a road game at pick any power conference team.
That's how Gonzaga started.
Yeah, just go play a road game. Don't play a neutral site game. Go play a road game. Go beat one of these teams in their gym. Because as unfair as it is, and you can shake your fist at the sky, and we can whine about how the power conference teams are being all uppity and not wanting to play on equal ground. Look, that's just the way the system is. And if you want to elevate yourself, you have to do something special. San Diego State and Gonzaga, while I know San Diego State was able to kind of schedule some home games against power conference teams early in the Steve Fisher era, they also schedule a bunch of road games. And these days, they are still scheduling those road games. Where San Diego State is playing road games at power conference teams, Arizona, Houston, teams like that. Utah State's got to go out there and test themselves against the best. And you know what? They might get their teeth kicked in. That happened to San Diego State twice this year.
Right.
Against some of the best teams. When they played Michigan, they got absolutely blasted. And so that may end up happening. But nobody really ever held it against San Diego State, so go out there and test yourself against the best.
They don't hold it against you. They say, okay, you lost, but at least you tried.
Yeah, and if you win, like San Diego State got into the Mountain West tournament last year solely based off that win over Houston. Imagine if they'd had a better conference schedule and all that, they would have once again been back in the 5 or 6 seed realm where they've been in a lot of seasons.
And if you want to be a legitimate team in March, you have to play those games, those types of opponents in November and December.
Yeah, so the Aggies need to change. Like, while I have generally defended the Aggies' non-conference scheduling as being adequate, at some point you got to come to the realization that being adequate for getting yourself into the tournament isn't enough anymore.
Yeah, gaming the net is not quite enough.
Yeah,
you actually have to schedule good opponents.
Yeah, you've got to get high-quality opponents. And so if Utah State wants to be in that, basically there's 2 paths to the, getting those higher seeds. It's either win just like literally every game. Because if the Aggies won 31, 32 games through the end of the conference tournament against a Pac-12 schedule, that probably gets them in. It didn't work for Miami of Ohio, but they're in the MAC.
Right. Yeah.
If you're in the Mountain West, like when San Diego State got a 2 seed back in like 2010, they won 30 plus games in a tough Mountain West. That got them, a 2 seed. It also helped they beat a top 10 BYU team in the conference tournament championship. But, you can either do that or you can win 27, 28 games, play a tough schedule, win some, lose some, but prove yourself, go on and run in the NCAA tournament at some point as a 6 or a 7 seed. And then at that point, it kind of becomes a knock-on effect where you gain respect and the committee is willing to give you that respect by giving you a higher seed based off past results. I know they don't like to think that they base stuff off past results, but they definitely do. We've seen that in action.
Yes.
So that's kind of my initial thoughts on where the Pac-12, like, I wanted to loop the Pac-12 into this because I didn't want to just go on about Jerrod Calhoun talking about the Aggies seeding. It's like, I want to say, like, what's the path for the Aggies if they want to fix this? Being a 9 seed when they sweep the Mountain West Championship. You want to be able to fix that when you go into the Pac-12. And while I think the Pac-12 will still keep them on a high level, and the Pac-12 is going to be a multi-bid conference. If the Aggies don't do something on their end, it's just going to be the Mountain West again in terms of what kind of seeding they can get.
I think that Jerrod Calhoun was likely going to Cincinnati no matter what.
Oh, yeah.
Just it's going home. Formative years were there. He was there under Coach Bob Huggins. It's where he's from. I mean, just resources, conference. I mean, a lot of things that just make sense. The seeding disrespect from the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee, that helps provide cover. Like, that's the cherry on top as to why he chose to leave.
Yeah,
and that's what he can complain about the most, because he was complaining about it before he left.
Yeah.
And so it kind of provides cover as to like, oh gosh, there's a ceiling here. I can't break through. It's like, yeah, there's probably more to it than just that as to why you left.
Yeah.
But it's still worth repeating, though.
Yeah.
It's still worth throwing out there, because it's a system that needs to be adjusted.
Yeah, even if it's cover and justification, he's not wrong.
Right, correct.
And that's kind of the end point there. We've got to take a break. We've got a lot of texts rolling in on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line. We will get to those, kind of a myriad of topics. So we're going to have to dance through a bunch of these, some relating to yesterday's topics with coaching searches, and some who have trickled in on today's topics. So we'll get to those coming up next here on the Full Court Press on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, The Fan. Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan, streaming online at 1069thefan.com and on the 1069 The Fan mobile app. Got a lot of texts rolling in on our Young Power Sports of Logan text line, 435-339-0321. Let's see, did we... I don't know if we ever got to this text from 8367, where they're asking why the buyout for Calhoun wasn't $4.3 million. I don't remember going.
I don't remember we discussed that.
Yeah, I remember reading the text. I was like, we need to get to it. But yeah, we never did get to it. But when I did the math a year ago, I came up with a $3.9 million number that's been reported. I know Casey Smurthwaite wrote an article where he calculated it to be about like $4 around 4.3 million or something like that. And I tended to lean more toward his math because, like, he's someone who knows this realm more than I do. I just kind of tried to read the contract and do some of the math. But it turns out my number was more right. I don't know. So I'd go with the reporting. I turned out to be accidentally right, I guess. But my understanding, based on how I read it, the number came out to 3.9 million. Exactly what made me right or what made others wrong, I don't know. So, like I said, accidentally right. It's like guessing on a true or false quiz. I managed to be accidentally right.
A couple of the texts that came in before the show today, 2444. Coaching vacancies at Blue Bloods like North Carolina and potentially Kansas could really shake up the coaching carousel this offseason. I'm not sure how much the ripple effect of those moves will affect USU, but it's all going to be very interesting to monitor. This might be a long shot, but with Hubert Davis likely looking for a new job to rehab his coaching career, do you think that he would look for a secure program like USU, or that Cam Walker would even be interested in someone like him?
Yeah, as far as Hubert Davis, so I do want to get to the first point of this text. I mean, I don't know. I don't think he would be a bad, like, taking a power conference reject isn't necessarily a bad thing. There are plenty of examples of those guys, it working out incredibly well at in football and in basketball.
Yep. They come with a big chip on their shoulder. Yeah. They want to prove they still have it.
Yeah, they're good recruiters in general. They are generally able to elevate programs. So it's something that can work, but obviously he would come in and you would know, like, this guy, if he's successful,
just a rental,
is gone in 2 or 3 years. If you're okay with that, the formula's worked for the Aggies to do that over and over. They get another big buyout, then they move on to the next coach. But
I think someone of an institution like that, and of his caliber, he'll get another job, but it's likely in some other power conference.
Yeah, probably like a lower level power conference job. As far as the ripple effect from Hubert Davis leaving North Carolina, like it really is a domino, because eventually it does get, not necessarily to Utah State, but like to the teams around Utah State, Mountain West, Pac-12, because North Carolina is going to be hiring basically whoever they want. Like, there's not too many coaches. Like, I looked at the list of coaches. Like, here are 10 possible candidates for North Carolina's job, and it's just like NBA assistant coaches. Tommy Lloyd at Arizona, a guy who's taking his team to like top 2 seed like 3 or 4 years in a row, is gunning for the Final Four this year. Like, yeah, he would leave Arizona, go to North Carolina. Like,
or TJ Otzelberger, who's at Iowa State,
just doing a fantastic.
Same thing.
Yeah, I don't even know I can't remember if Michigan's coach was thrown in there as well, but it's like just anybody. North Carolina is like one of the jobs. And so whoever they take, well, then suddenly, say they take Tommy Lloyd, well, then Arizona picks somebody probably from kind of another lower level power conference job. Then you get to the other stage where that program then looks maybe to the mid-majors, and maybe they're looking at Mountain West.
Yeah, it's definitely a domino effect.
Yeah, it's like it's not going to be, them hiring, North Carolina hiring from some of the Pac-12, but you get 2 or 3 stages down, that ripple effect does eventually reach the mid-majors. There was also a false alarm about Bill Self, where somebody reported that he was retiring, but he's since denied that, saying, I'm not retiring just yet.
Yeah.
But that would have been just as big, because then you have multiple kind of these essentially earthquakes where you have 2 blue bloods opening up at the same time.
Yeah, well, I think that just puts even that much more pressure on Cam Walker to get Utah State's position locked in.
Yeah.
Because someone they're going to be looking at could be somebody else that's affected by or desired based on other movements that happen with other institutions. Because somebody who was already sitting in the chair having some success could get poached away, and then that program with budget is going to go after some of the guys that Utah State would already be looking at.
Yeah, so Utah State going to want to wrap this coaching search up as soon as they can.
Yes.
On that subject, 0144 saying Rick Croy from Cal Baptist would be a great fit for Utah State. What he's done at Riverside, California is amazing. He recruits high-character guys, and they play hard, and he develops these guys. Before Cal Baptist, was an assistant at St. Mary's for Randy Bennett. And, yeah, I had somebody message me. I don't know, this might be the same guy. Then somebody, commented on one of our YouTube videos about Rick Croy. And so, yeah, he may very well be a candidate. He kind of fits in a couple of different categories that I was doing, where it's like he's kind of been a one-year success this year. He's had middling success the last couple of years, except this year they won the WAC conference tournament. I think they were one game behind UVU for the conference, the regular season title.
Yeah.
And they beat UVU in that conference tournament title game and ended up going to the NCAA tournament. I think 27 wins on the season. So
25-9.
Oh, 25-9. I must have been thinking of something else. But yeah, a solid season.
But I don't know
here.
if that includes. I don't know if that includes their conference.
It usually does. Any record you're seeing is probably going to include their conference tournament, all that.
Yeah, and then so anyway, Cal Baptist had a good year this year.
Yeah, pretty solid. Another coaching candidate.
And made it to the tournament. Yep.
5001, a little off the beaten path here, but says, hi, I don't see an offensive coordinator in Broncos coaching staff. What's going on? Means they haven't updated the roster page.
Yeah, Robert Anae is the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
That's been announced. He's doing things.
It's weird that he wouldn't be on there because they have updated the roster to include all of the players there for spring ball. You'd think they'd have the offensive coordinator up there by now.
Yeah, I will double check that. I don't know why. I am during the show here messaging with the SID up there, just trying to arrange time so I can run up and talk to coaches and players, figure out what their practice schedule looks like. So stay tuned for that. We may have some football audio coming soon.
Yeah, should be fun. 2603 saying, why when the Jazz have a legit shot of getting the number 1 pick does the NBA crack down on tanking or doing what everyone else has done historically? We'll get into tanking a little bit later. That is kind of on our second hour docket, but I'll say this. The NBA is trying to slam the door on tanking after the final year the Jazz are doing, because they've signaled they're going win now next year. Trading for Jaren Jackson Jr., they've signed Larry Markkinen to a big extension. They're not just going to pay him $1 million, millions, tens of millions of dollars to average 26 points and play 38 games in a season. So you got Walker Kessler they're going to have to extend or offer some kind of contract to. So they got Keontae George rolling out. So next year they're going all out. They're tanking this year, and the NBA is going to slam the door on tanking. And hopefully the Jazz can get away with a top 2 or 3 pick.
Yeah,
and get their guy, and then everyone else has to deal with tanking being.
But I get the sentiment. Why feeling upset that hey, we're just doing what everybody else is doing and has been doing for a long time. So why are we getting singled out?
Yeah, it's an understandable frustration, but yeah, Adam Silver's kind of sick of tanking.
Yes.
1818 saying, pretty impressive start to the Show Me campaign for Cam Walker. I love seeing the growth in fundraising from our athletic department. Exciting days ahead. Yeah,
big news today. Yeah. Another $2.5 million gift to athletics from the Alder family.
Yes.
There was already a $2.5 million gift to kick off the Show Me initiative. It was anonymous. But it was to kind of get things going, and that was just a few weeks ago. And now another $2.5 million gift. So this fundraising is going at a high level. These are major gifts to Utah State athletics as they're trying to reach their goal before they move into the Pac-12. So these big donors, these big gifts definitely help get them there.
Yeah. 8632 saying, word on the street is Craig Smith and Todd Phillips are out. Take that as you will. That's certainly possible.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
9938 texting in, if USU wants better seating, consistently win in March.
Yeah, that it's winning in March because you can see with San Diego State, you can kind of see the moment where when they went on an NCAA tournament run, when they had that kind of big season, it had an impact later down the line because you'd see them, under Steve Fisher's they were 11 seed here, an 11 seed there. Then suddenly they had this big season. They were a 2 seed, went on a run to the Sweet 16 or Elite 8. I forget exactly how far they went. I think it was the Elite 8. And then after that, they were able to get 5, 6 seeds. And since then, they've been respected with Gonzaga. You can kind of see that same pattern where eventually you just at some point, you just have to do something that's improbable. The Aggies have in their, since the start of the Stu Morrill era, roughly, they have basically performed as expected based on their seeding, based on their conference. Obviously, they've had a ton of wins, so I shouldn't say as expected, but that's mostly in reference to their runs in March, When they've been a 14 seed and a 13 seed, they've typically lost. When they've been an 8 seed or a 9 seed, I think they're 2-1 as an 8 or a 9 seed. Yeah. So roughly, slightly above average because, it's basically a 50-50 at that point. So they're 2-1 there. And then
or 2-2.
2-2? I think it's 2-1.
Did Craig Smith get him to an 8 seed?
They were an 8 seed once under Craig Smith, and they lost that game.
Right.
But I don't think they made it back to an 8 or a 9 seed under the Craig Smith or Ryan Odom or Danny Sprinkle. I think they were all...
Well, Sprinkle, they were a 9 seed.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, they were an 8 seed there, and that's when they beat TCU. So they go in 1-1, then they're a 9 seed this year. Because Ryan Odom and Craig Smith, again, Craig Smith outside of that 8 seed against Washington, they were a 10 or 11 seed.
Right, okay.
So... But as those 10 and 11 seeds, they kept losing and did a lot of that under Stu Morrill, which if you're a 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 seed, you're supposed to lose. And that's kind of how it's gone. So the Aggies have performed as expected, but performing as expected doesn't get you any respect. And so the Aggies have to outperform. They've outperformed their resources. They've outperformed their standing. What they did in the Stu Morrill era, they were outperforming their resources, their situation. In the Mountain West, they've done that again. But you've got to outperform expectations in March. And that's they've always outperformed expectations in November, December, January, February.
Yeah.
But you got to do it in March.
And even in the lead up to the conference tournament too. The way that they kind of stumbled to close out the season was tough. That's not really desirable. The committee wants to see a team that's got momentum. They want to reward teams that are doing well. And, Utah State, San Diego State, New Mexico, they all kind of stumbled into the postseason, and that hurts your chances of better seeding too.
Yeah. 5150 saying, give me Andy Newman, does more with a lot less, one at the D2 level, and has transformed a bottom feeder Big West team into a consistent top 4 team in the last 2 years, focuses on gritty defense and defensive rebounding while having the fastest pace offense in the country. This guy is a winner. If we can't get Olin, give me Newman. Mentions also played at SCU and is a little older, could be long-term. Yeah, that was something that I didn't focus on as much when I mentioned Andy Newman on the show, and then even in my article, is that it's not just what he's done at Cal State Northridge, where he's taken a team that has a head coaching job that's considered one of the worst in the conference because of the resources they have. He's turned them not necessarily he's not running the Big West, but he's performing at a high level. But then, he won at the Division II level. And I somehow missed the fact that, indeed, yes, he did. One of his college years, he played at SUU. Yeah. So he has a connection to the state of Utah, even if it's a slight connection, because it was 1 year of his playing career was at SUU, and the others were outside of, I think one of the others might have been at Colorado State, if I recall correctly. But yeah, Andy Newman seems like a pretty solid, he's growing on me a little bit more and more, especially after I learned of a bit more of his D2 success, even if small, still having a connection to the state of Utah. So interesting candidate there. 9315 with a couple of texts, actually a lot of texts here, saying that darn video exposed too much for a radio host. There's a reason you picked up radio and not TV. Okay. Did Jerrod's comment help or hurt USU? Jerrod made it sound like he didn't need USU players. Kind of summarize all of those, I don't think it really helps or hurt, because he called him a top 30 job, and I think some, Cincinnati fans especially picked up on the thing at the end to help justify we're a better program and all that. So you basically pick up from that quote what you want to pick up from it.
Yeah, I think that quote, I don't know that it helps or hurts Utah State. I think it's a nice sentiment from a coach in a new Big 12 program to say that place is a good program. That's a top 30 program. They got great fans. They got great students. But college basketball at that level is broken. And I'm grateful I'm here because I don't have the ceiling like I have there.
Yeah.
That's kind of what he's saying. Kind of serves both masters. Yeah.
And
I don't know him saying he doesn't need USU players. I think he's just there's only certain things you can and cannot say right now.
Yeah, with the portal not being open, you got to be careful how you say things and how you talk about recruiting. Coaches they dance around any question about recruiting just because there's so many rules they can't say basically anything.
And he should talk about trying to keep the guys that are there.
Yeah.
I mean, that should be his first priority.
And that's the narrative he spun at Utah State. Like, there are a lot of things that he copy-pasted from what he said at Utah State at Cincinnati.
Yeah. But at least he talked about Utah State, whereas Craig Smith did not even breathe a word of the Aggies when he was introduced at Utah.
Let's hit a break real quick. We've got a few more texts coming on the other side, so we'll continue getting to those. We also have apparently word on the street is that Craig Smith is out, but we have the results, or at least I think the poll is about to end, whether fans would like Craig Smith to come back to Utah State. So we'll get to that next here on the Full Court Press. Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen. I think Best of Northern Utah, is the voting closed?
It ends today.
It ends today. We don't know what time. So maybe go check the website, bestofnorthernutah.com. Go see if you can still vote. But even if the voting has closed.
Voting is still open
Voting
as
is
of
still
right
open.
now.
All right. So it ends today. So if you want your last chance to go support the local businesses that you believe in, restaurants, local plumber, carpenter, all that fun stuff.
Schools, shopping,
schools, radio
lawyers.
hosts. I don't know if there's a category for radio hosts.
No, unfortunately,
we would win
not.
that every single year. At least sports
I'd love
radio
to think so.
Hey, I'd like to think so.
Sports
as well.
radio hosts local sports radio hosts on from 4 to 6 p.m. every day.
I think we would probably be top two. That reminds me, I saw a tweet today. Somebody Stevens, the Celtics GM or president or whatever, Brad Stevens. I couldn't remember his first name. There was a rumor he was a candidate for the North Carolina job, turned it down, but somebody tweeted Why would you leave a top two GM job in the NBA? It's like, just say the best GM job. Like, stop being a coward and saying, oh, top two, because it's like, you clearly want to say best, but you don't want to like be disrespectful to get people on your case. Just say arguably the best, or just be bold and say the best. Like, I'm tired of people saying, oh, he's a top three. You're just a coward that doesn't want to say it's the best.
Say the best or one of the best.
Yeah, one of the best. We have the language for all this kind of stuff. People are like, oh, he's a top three small forward in the Mountain West. And it's like, come on, people. Just
name the others, cowards.
Especially when it's just like top two. Because if it's top two, you're just being a coward. If you say top 5 or top 10, okay. You're working with a range and you just don't want to like nail it down. Maybe you don't want to list off the entire top 10 because that takes time when you only got one life to live here. So I get that. But if you're saying top 2, you're just a coward.
A couple other texts rolling in on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line. 9315 had a few others. Talk about, would the Pac-12 help Utah State in the future? We were asking that question with the seeding narrative that Jerrod Calhoun has been pounding lately, even before the tournament, during the tournament, and now even as an introductory press conference at Cincinnati today. But 9315 says, I would think that being in the Pac would get rid of the narrative of the bad seeding for USU. One main factor would be having Gonzaga. They buck the trend already, having the national attention of the committee.
I think the problem there is, though, is that Gonzaga has the attention. Utah State does not. Having Gonzaga in the conference helped for strength of schedule. But one, you got to win those games. And two, again, you got to buck the trend in March, where the Aggies, again, always overperform in November, December, January, February, but then are basically living up to expectations in March. When they're an 8 or a 9 seed, they win. When they're anything else, they lose. You've got to either really overperform in those other months where you can get like a 4 or a 5 seed, or go on the improbable run as an 11 seed.
Yeah, just because Gonzaga's in your conference doesn't mean that's going to necessarily help you individually. You still have to win games.
Yeah, you got to
and you have to beat Gonzaga. Every now and then. Because for the longest while in the Mountain West, Utah State could never beat San Diego State, and now they are more regularly competing with and beating San Diego State.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to do that with Gonzaga as well.
Yeah.
8632 texting in. Once upon a time, the Aggies were a top 20 KenPom team. We got a 14 seed. We'll never get good seeding until we finally make that Elite 8 run. I don't know if you need to go all the way to the Elite 8. Certainly that helps, but you have to get into the second weekend.
Yeah. I think that's where things could start, but an Elite 8 run would like get you most of the way there. Basically, it's like one Elite 8 run or like 2 or 3 Sweet 16 runs. Like, again, the deeper you go, the more attention you get, the more prestige your program has.
It helped Nevada for a minute, but they couldn't sustain it. Like they had that Sweet 16 run with the Martin twins, but they couldn't sustain that. And so they've just slowly drifted back down. So you have to be able to continue to compete and schedule and win games.
Yeah. 5344 with a few different texts saying, just joining, so I don't know how much you've talked about this, but what is the general feeling around Todd Phillips right now? Not the most flashy potential hire, but he's done well at UVU, won a junior college national championship, and has a lot of local ties. Could be really good for in-state recruiting, and maybe could bring some potential players to fill holes from this season, i.e. point guard if Perryman leaves, and who knows, maybe he'd stay for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, we talked a lot about him yesterday.
Yeah,
he was your primary candidate.
Yeah, I think we had basically 2 candidates between us. Flynn Clayman at High Point, and then Todd Phillips with Utah Valley, where, there's a lot of things to like. 5344 outlining a lot of them. Things to like about Todd Phillips. And obviously, he's not the only great candidate, but I think he is a good candidate.
Yeah, back-to-back 25-win seasons, right there in the hunt for the regular season and conference tournament titles, and strong ties to the state. So I think he's one worth looking at. Yeah. He's not my top candidate, but I think he's on my list. Yeah. And you should take a look at him.
We got to take one more break before we finish up the first hour. We'll get to a couple more texts coming up next, and then the results of that Craig Smith poll I ran. See what Aggie Nation has to say about whether or not they'd welcome Craig Smith back. We'll have that next here on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan, Full Court Press. Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Reminder that Napa Auto Parts has batteries, headlights, wiper blades. They're all in stock and on sale now at your local Napa Auto Parts. They got locations from Preston all the way down to Providence. Chemical Guys Car Wash, which I realized I looked at my car and some birds have been using it as a, as a toilet essentially. So I need a car
Target
wash.
practice.
Basically. They got air fresheners, shop towels, sea foam, and more. Again, check out your locally owned Napa Auto Parts stores. So whether or not Craig Smith is actually still in the running for the head coaching vacancy at Utah State, it's been a topic of conversation on Monday, Tuesday, today. It keeps going on and on. We're not going to belabor the point too much here, but I did run a poll. It's technically still open for another 48 minutes if you haven't voted in it and want to let your voice be heard there at least. The results thus far, so I have heck no, leaning no, not the best but good, and then heck yes. Those are my 4 options. I don't have very many characters to use, so I kind of have to be brief with these.
Sure.
42% say heck no. 33% are leaning no. So that's 75% just say no of varying degrees.
Yeah.
18% say not the best but good. So like they'd be okay, maybe not their best candidate, but they'd be okay with it. And then 8% say heck yes. They want Craig Smith back.
Very small group.
Yeah, very small group. So and yeah, just in descending levels, like there's most people are very much against it. Almost a simple majority, basically a super majority, just say no in general. And then about a quarter would like it, or at least not hate it.
Yeah, so Aggie fans, at least on your poll, don't seem to like the idea of Craig Smith coming back. Nice guy, had a great run while he was here, but concerns about what happened to him after he left.
Yeah. Don't go away. We'll be back after this break here on the Full Court Press. Welcome on back to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen. Second hour on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan. Streaming online at 1069thefan.com, on the 1069 The Fan mobile app, and live on YouTube. You can see Eric Fransen's glorious purple plaid shirt and my, we'll say, mediocre blue plaid one. This one made it all the way down to San Diego and back. So
You've got some purple in there. We both have some blue and purple.
There's barely purple in
You're
there. I'm
definitely more blue.
surprised you can see it from over there. I can barely see it. It doesn't really show up when I look at the stream replay back. But yeah, it's a nice little short sleeve shirt. I got to get back into a short sleeve shirt. I'm wearing shorts to work for like the first time in a long time, as opposed to jeans or slacks.
It's so warm, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's nice. But we talked a lot in the first hour about, going back to Jerrod Calhoun, his introductory press conference, some comments made about Utah State, kind of just going over the coaching search a little bit, Utah State's kind of NCAA tournament seeding ceiling, which is a deceptively hard phrase to say.
Yes.
But we've also had a lot of interaction on the text line, and we'll be shifting towards some other Mountain West stuff, Mountain West teams in the NIT, some transfer portal news, looking around both the Mountain West and Pac-12, what players have announced their intention to enter the portal. Nobody can enter the portal yet until April 1st.
Portal's still open for like another week or so.
But it is effectively open because players are announcing. We're getting about 10, 20 a day or so that are announcing they're in the portal. Want to clear the deck on the text line and also the YouTube chat, as they'll help us lead in to some of these topics. But 8502 saying floor of the new Pac-12 is probably 2 bids, ceiling probably 4 to 5, which is similar to the Mountain West. One bid year this year was dumb. Highest bid for St. Mary's ever. It's got a 5 seed. Seems extremely similar to the Mountain West right now. So definitely hurt the schools remaining in the Mountain West, which is probably ceiling 3 bid, floor 1 bid. But help yourself, not a ton. People see power conference and non-power conferences, and that is the mid-major life, friends.
Yep, that's true. Pac-12 is not a power conference.
Yeah.
So it's on the same footing as a lot of other mid-majors until they consistently win and consistently perform, not just in March, but also in November and December with strong non-conference scheduling. That's going to be the life that you're going to have to live until you start to break through and have more recognition and have power conference teams feel like they won't get hurt by scheduling you no matter the outcome.
Yeah. 5344 saying for the Aggies to get a better seed in the Pac-12, I think several other teams not named Gonzaga would have to make runs in March. Yeah, for me, like the biggest hang up where like the Pac-12 right now is looking like kind of similar to where the Mountain West has been, and where it should be able to go up, because that's the kind of thing is like right now it's where the Mountain West has been, but it has room to grow from there. The Mountain West was peaking at the 4, 5, 6 bids.
Yeah.
And I mean, just by volume, the Pac-12 can't really get to that, but like the percentage of teams, it can meet that kind of criteria. But it's being held back by Oregon State and Washington State and Fresno State not living up to what they can be. Colorado State had a bit of a up and down in the end kind of mediocre season. So if you have Colorado State, Fresno State, and like one of Washington State, Oregon State, and Texas State all getting up into like, top 100 to where like you maybe only have 1 or 2 teams outside the top 100, in a 9-team conference, that's the kind of thing that can help elevate the strength of schedule for conference beyond what it's been in the Mountain West, though even then it wouldn't be like crazy higher, and the Aggies would still need to be doing a lot of stuff in their non-conference play, stuff they have not done before. Go play a road game where odds are you're going to lose by 15, but go play that game with the knowledge that, hey, with the resources that Utah State is trying to amount, they're going to be able to field teams that are capable of winning those tough road games against some of the best that, college basketball has to offer.
Yeah, a couple of comments on the on our YouTube chat from Ruben Vallis, 917. Apologies if I didn't get that proper pronunciation there, but it says it's going to be tougher and tougher to get seeds lower than 8 or 9 as a mid-major now. This is not going to change. Utah State has been extremely fortunate with all the coaching changes you've endured. You're not going to pull Olin for what amounts to a lateral move. Utah State is not a better program than New Mexico. They're both excellent programs, but are about equal. You lured Bronco because he is a Latter-day Saint. This is all coming from a Lobo fan. Love the show. You two have done a really nice job since Calhoun left covering the news. Go Lobos.
I appreciate that. And I agree.
Thanks for listening from Albuquerque.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what was said there. I think the only thing I might have a slight disagreement on is with Bronco. Like, Utah State's football program is better than New Mexico's football program. Although him being LDS and the ties to Utah, he also got a big raise. Like, the point I think stands there mostly from Ruben there. But yeah, like, it'd be hard for Utah State to pull Olin, as we were kind of talking yesterday, where like there's a perception that New Mexico's coaching job is better than the Aggies, let alone the status of the program. Like, the resources New Mexico have typically been better than the Aggies. I mean, they lured away Dayton Albury.
Yeah.
I know the Aggies kind of ended up choosing Drake over Dayton, but like Dayton tripled his NIL, leaving Utah State.
Yeah, the Hubert Davis news should have folks in Albuquerque a little bit more nervous.
I know
not because he's a candidate to go to North Carolina, but because of the dominoes that may fall.
That was honestly one of the thoughts I had yesterday was like, oh, yeah, Eric Olin might actually get poached by somebody.
Yeah.
We'll see if that ends up happening. And New Mexico is starting to have some of the same problems with coaches and athletic directors the Utah State has been having, not being able to hang on to any of them because they keep having success.
Let's talk a little bit about those New Mexico Lobos.
Yes.
They are in the NIT. It's still going. I don't know if you've had a chance to tune into any of these games, but the Mountain West had good representation early on.
It's like 5 teams in it, I think.
Yeah, it's narrowing down, however. But Colorado State, UNLV, Nevada, New Mexico, Wyoming, those were the teams that were representing the Mountain West in the NIT. New Mexico got past Sam Houston, Colorado State, and lost to St. Joseph's. But Nevada is still in it. Wyoming got bounced early. But now that it's been going on for a little bit, New Mexico and Nevada are still alive. New Mexico with the big win last night to advance to the Final Four, essentially. So they will play on April 2nd. At the Hinkle Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. They will face Tulsa, who's also had a nice run. Nevada plays tonight. They play Auburn, and the winner of that gets to advance to Hinkle Fieldhouse in Indianapolis as well. So they'll face the winner of Dayton versus Illinois State, another familiar name for Aggie
which
fans.
is ongoing, and Illinois State's off to a pretty solid start. They're up 10-0. A kill shot to start the game.
To get the game going.
Yeah, 13-0. There we go. Illinois State's having a field day there. So yeah, the Mountain West representing well in the NIT. Obviously Auburn, like, they're one of the first teams out. So like we've typically seen like somebody in that first 4 out go on a run in the NIT. Like, didn't Indiana State like make it to the final of I don't think they won it, but like it was that year when they had Robert Avila. The guy who's this year was on St. Louis, but like he led them. I think they were kind of in a similar-ish situation to Miami of Ohio. They weren't undefeated, but like they were a team that was like the narrative was they got to win their conference tournament, even though they were, I think, clearly good enough to be on the right side of the bubble. They were in a 1-bid league, and that's just the way that 1-bid leagues work. If you don't win the conference tournament, Miami of Ohio kind of got lucky that they went undefeated. That was about the only way they undefeated until they lost in the conference tournament. If they lost 1 or 2 games in the MAC, they wouldn't have made it.
Right.
And that was kind of with Indiana State. They didn't have a perfect record, but yeah, we've seen teams making these runs in these next 4 out teams. Although is Auburn like the only of the next 4 out that actually is even in the tournament? Because San Diego State was one of the others.
And they declined to participate.
And I suddenly can't. I wrote down the first 4 out earlier today in some research I was doing, and I suddenly can't remember who it was. I remember Auburn and San Diego State. I think Indiana was in there too. Indiana and some other power conference. It was 3 power conference teams in San Diego State.
Was Wake Forest one of them?
I don't think so, but it's possible.
Just because they were a number 1 seed in the NIT.
Google is free.
Yeah, but Tomislav Buljan had a career day. just the other day, like 27 points, 11 rebounds, helping New Mexico. And so to New Mexico's credit, like they've taken this as an opportunity with young players to keep playing basketball, to continue to develop and improve and prove something to themselves, to their fans, and to college basketball that they're still a good basketball team. This can help build momentum for next year. And New Mexico also has been really the crowd favorite in this tournament so far. More fans are turning out to watch New Mexico than anybody else. So give a lot of credit to that New Mexico fan base and how they've shown out to support their team in the NIT. And that's just writing more dollars to the bottom line for the New Mexico athletics department.
Ruben Valles, by the way, chimed in and say, you're right, I am worried. Talking about Eric Olin. But yeah, I do want to note that like it is very much a credit to New Mexico fans. I know they're not selling the place out, but others are, getting like 2,000 or 3,000, where it's like
New Mexico's getting like 7,000 or 8,000.
They're getting 7,000 to 9,000. So like they're making, they're getting as many people in their arena as like all of the other games in that round combined. And it again just shows where New Mexico just obviously has an amazing basketball program and amazing investment from their community.
Yeah.
To be able to do that. And so it's really nice to see, see the good representation in the Mountain West. New Mexico obviously making a show of it with their crowd and with the team on the court. But then Nevada also, they're making a run of it. And obviously they got to play a really good Auburn team. One of the best teams in the field. They were one of the first four out. And Ruben helping us out saying it was San Diego State, Auburn, Oklahoma, and Indiana. The one I was missing was Oklahoma and was kind of unsure on Indiana. So those were the first four out. And yeah, Auburn, I think the only one of those four to participate in the NIT. Which, yeah, again, sometimes the NIT is just kind of the revenge tour of we missed the tournament, we think we should have made it. So maybe they should have the NIT like before the NCAA tournament. I don't know. I mean, the logistics doesn't really work, but like if you could have the NIT before and then like the winner of the NIT gets a bid in the NCAA tournament or something, that's kind of a stupid idea. But maybe you can just have another play-in essentially. Which we're going to have a 12-team play-in the next few years anyway. So
yeah, maybe. But bottom line here is that the Mountain West has been well represented in the NIT with at least one team into the Final Four. Another is trying to get there. There's been good representation in this postseason overall for the Mountain West. Even though they didn't have very many teams in the NCAA tournament, they were able to produce a good number for the NIT, and they've shown up pretty well. Good for them.
And I think it's good. Well, the NIT is obviously seen kind of as a consolation prize. There's a lot of teams that are declining, some with reasonable excuses, some without reasonable excuses. It's good to have teams in the tournament, and it is good to win because, like, if you go far in the NIT, you do get noticed. Like, hey, this team's in the Final Four of the NIT. Hey, this team is still winning games. It's not March Madness.
It's on national television.
Yeah, it's not the one shining moment and all that, but it is good for your program to make a run in the NIT. And as you mentioned, it's good for the bottom line as well. New Mexico's had, three home games essentially now?
Yep.
Where that's some money in their pocket.
Absolutely.
Along with if they manage to pull off the win in the NIT, that's obviously there's some prestige with that. Some people might downplay it, but there is prestige to winning the NIT and just an upside in general.
Yeah. Well, it just speaks to coaches who still want to coach, players who still want to play. They like each other. They want to go out and prove something. They're not done playing basketball. And what more can they prove? So best of luck to New Mexico. They're into the Final Four. They play at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Nevada taking on Auburn right now, kind of a rough start, but we'll see if the Wolfpack can rally. But if they win, they will advance.
Illinois State and Dayton.
Oh, Illinois State and Dayton.
And Nevada and Auburn aren't playing.
Oh, they play later.
They play at 7. Illinois State and Dayton are playing. Sorry, I guess I must have said that. I didn't explain that very well when you were talking about Nevada and Auburn playing. I mentioned Illinois State and Dayton had already started. It was a 13-0 start, though. It is 17-10 now. Still Illinois State over Dayton, though.
So, yeah, Nevada and Auburn, they play at 7 o'clock tonight on ESPN2.
Yeah, and we talk about all this. I brought up all this off the court stuff. There's still good basketball being played.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can watch.
I mean, the NCAA tournament, the Sweet 16 picks up again tomorrow. We'll have those games here on the Fan starting at 5 o'clock tomorrow and on Friday as well. Then the Elite Eight on Saturday and Sunday. We'll have those games here on the Fan. And college basketball, and we talked about this earlier, like there are aspects of college basketball that are messed up, but viewership is really high. People still want to tune in to watch what's happening in college basketball. There's still drama. Even though there were a lot of blowouts in the first couple of rounds, there were still dramatic finishes. And that's what people tune in, because you don't want to miss that game that gets decided by a last-second shot. And there were a number of those. And it's been fun, even though there's been some blowouts. The viewership is still really, really strong for college basketball right now.
Yeah, it is really good. As we were kind of saying yesterday, college sports is broken, but it's not dying. It is growing.
Yes.
One thing before we hit a break, wanted to touch on the transfer portal. Not a ton to report, but some things to report. Looking at the Mountain West and transfer portal, I'm working on a Google sheet where I'm going to start tracking this stuff, much as I did last season. I'll make it public at some point when it looks presentable. But there are, I think, 4 players from the Mountain West who have announced their intention to enter the transfer portal.
I've got more than that.
In the Mountain West?
Oh, well, I've got Mountain West and Pac-12.
Yeah, so 4 in the Mountain West and then 8 in the Pac-12. I think that's what I got, if I'm doing the counting right. So I'll start. This is mostly in alphabetical order by team name. So Grand Canyon, Mekhi Williams has entered the portal. Yeah, going to be one of the higher rated recruits out of the mid majors this year. And similarly, Colby Garland from San Jose.
Both of those guys, third team all Mountain West.
Yeah,
both are like scorers, good body size. Yeah. They can do scoring, rebounding, assists. Those guys will be in demand. Yeah, very good all-around guards, likely to end up going to a power conference or a kind of a high mid-major. Of course, Kai Williams already had a kind of high mid-major. But Adrian Myers also leaving San Jose or intending to enter the transfer portal. And for Wyoming, one of their up-and-coming guards, Demarion Dennis, who I think got some votes for All Mountain West. I don't think he made it. I thought I saw somebody's ballot that had him on there. But a talented guard in his own right. Yeah, averaging 11.2 points, 3.2 rebounds. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to him on the open market.
Yeah. I haven't seen anyone in the Mountain West other than those teams, nobody from Air Force, Hawaii, Nevada, New Mexico. I mean, New Mexico is still playing.
Yeah, New Mexico and Nevada are still active.
Yeah.
So
I didn't check on UC Davis or UTEP yet, or to be honest, UNLV either. So a few of these teams I didn't double check. But those are the 4 that I have right now. I checked everyone in the future Pac-12 though, searching social media essentially high and low to try and make sure, look at keywords and do all these different searches. And so I came up with, again, 7 names. No, it is 8.
And I think I have 9.
Ooh, so you might have one that I don't. Boise State, R.J. Keene leaving the Broncos. He has 1 more year of eligibility. He was honored on their senior night, but he's got 1 more year of eligibility, and he will go elsewhere. Fresno State with a bulk of departing players. Jacques Manny, Gasper Kosovar, Macandio, I'm butchering his name. And then the much easier to pronounce, Deshaun Gorey, and more notable, where he is going to be a player in high demand. Probably could have a similar trajectory, though he's not the same archetype of player, but you could see him do something similar to Elijah Price. Will either transfer to a really good mid-major school and look for a bigger role, where Fresno State's still kind of struggling, or he could go to a high major school. But he is a talented wing, standing about 6'6", 6'7", versatile, potential scorer, rebounder, even a bit of playmaking too.
Yeah, just under 16 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists. So a playmaker, somebody who a mid-major, high mid-major would love to have him on their roster.
I think Utah State would love him to have him on their roster. Yeah, just a freshman last year, so this dude's going places.
Yeah.
San Diego State going to be losing B.J. Davis. He intends to enter the transfer portal. One of their better players, probably their single most underrated player, at least for anyone who wasn't in San Diego State. They certainly appreciated the talented BJ Davis. But most people just saw him, he's coming off the bench, but then they don't realize that he's making a lot of the clutch plays for them a lot of the season, closing, even if he's not starting.
Honorable mention, All Mountain West, averages about 11 points. Had he not started 1 or 2 games, he would have been the 6th man of the year, or at least in more serious consideration.
I think he would have won 6th man of the year had he been eligible for the award. I think it would have been decently close for him and Carson Templin, but to be honest, if he was eligible, I would have voted for him. So
yeah, he would have been the odds-on favorite.
Yeah. Nobody else from the future Pac-12. I checked Colorado State, Gonzaga, Oregon State, Texas State. Utah State has not had anybody that I'm aware of announce it yet unless something's happened during our show. Washington State has a couple of players in the portal. I should check. Did you have anybody of those teams I mentioned?
No.
Before I list up. Okay, so these two.
But I did have 3 from Washington State.
Okay, so I must have missed one. Emeli Yalaho?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
How would you say it, Eric?
Yep.
Eric, come on.
Emeli Yalaho.
I think you did it better than I did. But then a familiar name to Aggie fans who follow.
And he's kind of an interesting name. 10 points, 5.5, almost 6 rebounds a game. So that's a guy who did contribute, who did produce. Yeah. So he's somebody that will be a target.
Yeah. But yeah, the familiar name to Aggie fans, former Aggie recruit, Case Wynot.
Yeah.
Didn't really do anything in his 2 years at Washington State.
No, had an injury this year, didn't play in very many games. Certainly he caught a lot of attention when Danny Sprinkle was recruiting him out of a small school up in northern Idaho. He was a bucket getter.
Yeah, he was putting up insane numbers.
But then you look at who he's competing against and who he's even playing with. It's like, well, it's really not that hard to get that many buckets.
It's like guys that looked like me in high school.
Yeah, but he was 6'6", and he's got a nose for scoring, but he never really caught on at Washington State. So he's in the portal looking for a fresh start. And then the other one that I found was Emmanuel Ugbo.
The former Boise State guy.
Averaged about 6.7 points per game. So apparently he is also listed or stated his intentions to go into the portal.
Yeah. So those are the portal players that we have tracked down so far for the Mountain West and the Pac-12. We'll keep things up to date as best as we can catch all these names. As I already showed, it's easy to miss them sometimes.
Yeah, the portal is not even open officially yet.
Yeah. So we've got to take a break. When we come back, we'll get to some more text, but we'll also begin shifting a little bit toward the NBA. They're going to they're putting their foot down on tanking, and they're also expanding and certainly taking some real steps toward expanding instead of it just being talked about by the media. So we'll get into that next here on the Full Court Press. Indoor air in our area can be up to 5 times dirtier than outdoor air, especially during dry winter months. Dry air keeps dust and allergens floating longer, sending them deeper into your lungs and making sickness more likely. Mountain Valley Heating and Air installs high-efficiency steam humidifiers that use 1 gallon of water with no waste to improve air quality. Call 435-753-5170 for a free in-home air quality assessment from Mountain Valley Heating and Air. So, Eric, the NBA is sick and tired of the Jazz's crap, and it is only the Jazz that have ever been a problem with this. They are tanking, and it is their fault that the integrity of the league is falling to pieces. It's not the Clippers trying to circumventing the camp, not trying, succeeding. It's not the NBA getting into bed with every gambling company in the world, and Giannis literally doing a sponsorship with a gambling organization and then kind of playing the entire NBA fan base by doing this will he, won't he leave the Bucks type thing, and people literally gambling on whether or not he would leave the Bucks with the company that he partnered with. So no, none of that is hurting the integrity of the league. It is the Jazz tanking.
Or the silliness that happened in the Miami game with Bam Adebayo getting his 83 points.
I didn't really have a problem with that. I know a lot of people had a problem with that. I thought it was just kind of cool that he I mean, it was weird that he did it.
Yeah, it was just there was a lot of silliness.
I would have listed off about 15, 16 other players before, like Bam Adebayo was a great player. I just don't see him as a scorer.
Yeah, I don't think anybody had that on their bingo card.
Was like if you say Bam Adebayo would have one of the best games in the league that year, it'd have been like, yeah, he's a pretty good player. But like Bam Adebayo would have the second highest scoring game in league history. It'd been like, excuse me,
are you drunk?
Did you like turn up his ratings and go play him on NBA 2K?
So NBA owners. Governors, NBA governors and Adam Silver met to talk about a variety of issues, and certainly one of the biggest issues was expansion, and we'll get to that. But they also addressed tanking, and some comments from Adam Silver on this topic. He says it has business implications, it has basketball implications, it has integrity implications for the league. So it's one that we take very seriously, and we're going to fix it, full stop. Yeah.
And then another follow-up quote. I don't remember exactly where this came from. I'm reading this off of Tim Bontemps tweeting this, where he said, going into next season, this is him quoting Adam Silver.
Is Adam Silver saying this again?
Going into next season, the incentives will be completely different than they are now. Bontemps added in parentheses, regarding the lottery and tanking.
Yep.
Those will be completely different than they are now. So that was also part of what Adam Silver was talking about.
And one more to this. He says, again, Adam Silver, there's an aspect of team building that is called the genuine rebuild, a rebuild with integrity. The problem we're having these days is it's become almost impossible to distinguish between the tank and rebuild.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's hard to know in the NBA if there's just a bad team. Are they a young rebuilding team or are they a tanking team? Because those lines are very blurred. And it could be all of the above.
Yeah.
Frankly, because how good this draft class is, there are a lot of teams that are participating in those kinds of shenanigans.
Yeah, well, teams they have generally masked their tank by deliberately making themselves a bad team. That's what the Jazz did. They deliberately made themselves into a bad team by trading their best players, by signing, guys who were fringe players. Like they signed Chris Dunn, who kind of washed out of the league, of course, with the Jazz. He's actually kind of able to revive his career, but he's still kind of a fringe rotation player.
And got another contract.
But yanking a guy like Simone Fontecchio, who actually has, to be honest, they've grabbed fringe league guys who actually turned out to earn a spot in the NBA, but they weren't signing known free agents. They were signing nobodies. And it turns out the Jazz were just kind of too good at this, because when they traded away their best players, they stumbled backwards into all-star Lauri Markkanen. And, they've also got Keontae George, who's been a lot better this year than anyone was expecting. So the Jazz went into this just trying to go with the old, we're making ourselves a young team that just happens to be bad. It's become, with the Jazz, a very deliberate and you might say immoral tank. We're talking about tank with integrity. The Jazz tried to do that tank with integrity by just making themselves a young and bad team, but they had too many good players. Walker Kessler, Lowry Markkanen, Keontae George. They are too good for the Jazz to tank in the way that they wanted to get a top pick.
Because they still have a good coach.
Yeah, they still have a good coach.
And they still have a good basketball culture.
Yeah, and they've got enough good players and a good fan base that they're able to be not the worst team, but, if they were going all out. I know last year they had the worst record, but that's because they held out all of their best players for most of the year. And they got fined over it. So the Jazz kind of tried to do that tank with integrity, but it becomes this immoral tank, if that's the word that we want to use. And other NBA teams have joined in on that. They are also doing the same thing where they're sitting their best players on purpose. Washington has traded for multiple all-star players and are just benching them because they don't want them to play, because they know they will get more wins than they want because they want a top draft pick. And so the issue that the NBA is having isn't so much that teams are tanking, because I do want to give Adam Silver this, is that this is actually something that should be worrying them. But again, it's not that teams are tanking, because as people have rightfully pointed out, that has always happened. Teams have always been tanking. It's why they instituted a lottery in the 80s, is because there were grumblings and rumblings from NBA teams and owners and GMs and all that teams were tanking for those top picks. So they instituted a lottery. So we can go back to a decade before I was even born and find tanking. And it has happened even with the lottery ever since. The lottery has never stopped teams from tanking, but it has always been only a couple of teams, or, and again, for some of those, sometimes maybe they were just bad. But now it is half the NBA isn't even trying to win. I mean, it was a few weeks ago.
At least a third. Yeah, or about half, but at least a third.
It's close to half because it's like 14 teams. So remember, it was a couple of weeks ago that there was that stat about how like the bottom 14, or it was the bottom 10, I don't know if it was the entire bottom 14, but it was like the bottom 10 or 14, like most of the lottery teams had combined to lose 40 straight games.
Yes.
Like that's the kind of problem. Like if your bottom 3 teams are just absolute dog water, but most everyone else is at least kind of trying, like you have an 11th place team that is mostly trying for that playoff spot or that play-in spot, they just don't get it. That's still all right for the league. But when you have teams that are like 9 or 10 in the lottery, just flat out trying to tank, desperately trying to get to maybe the 6th spot, that's where it's a problem for the NBA. Is it the biggest problem that the NBA is facing? I don't think so. Adam Silver thinks it is. So it is a problem where so many teams are tanking. And that's where they then have to take a step in.
Yeah, and apparently they're going to have a separate Board of Governors meeting in May that they will specifically address this, because they'll have to change the incentives for teams. They have to change the incentive of the draft, because right now the incentive to build your team in a lot of cases is through the draft. For small market teams, the best way to get a star is through the draft. You can't trade for them, or you can, but it's hard, it's expensive. Certainly can't get them in free agency, so you have to get them through the draft. So they have to change how the draft kind of functions and how teams get their positions in the draft. But also, I don't know, they'll also discuss different penalties. We've talked a lot about tanking this year, but they're going to spend a lot more time in May on this specific topic. They want to get it settled what their plan is for the future by the time the draft actually happens, because they want to be able to come out while they have their platform, while everybody's watching the NBA, to say, this is how we're doing the draft this year, but this is how things will change for the future in this league.
And I am very curious to see which direction they go, because again, there's a bunch of different ways that people have suggested. There's you can't pick top 5 in the draft like multiple years in a row, or more than like twice in 3 years, or some variation on that, limiting how many times you can pick top 5 within
Adjusting
a certain number of years.
Protections, like the Jazz were working so hard to be in their position because theirs is top 8 protected.
Yeah.
If it wasn't protected, would they have a different season this year?
Yeah, if they weren't allowed to put protections on that pick and they traded away, they'd just be going all out this year, just developing their team and just doing the best they can.
Right.
So removing protections or limiting the kinds of protections you put on there, I think that's certainly an interesting way to do it. Although I think that could have a knock-on effect of limiting the amount of trades that happen, because being able to put protections on trades has facilitated, or put protections on picks has facilitated a lot more trades.
It provides more flexibility in what you can offer. Yeah.
And you'd be less hesitant where it's like, okay, I'm not giving up this pick, and I have a backup plan if things go wrong with this trade. And so teams might hesitate to where like a lot less first-round picks are being traded outside of trades for stars. And even trades for stars are including protections sometimes. So that's something that may have a knock-on effect. Because if you remove protections, you might just see fewer trades.
Interesting comment on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line, 6294. Locke, I guess referring to David Locke, play-by-play announcer for the Utah Jazz, mentioned what I thought was a good solution to tanking. All teams that miss the playoffs, their records against other teams that miss the playoffs, that's how they rank in the draft. Team with the best record against other teams missing the playoffs gets the number one pick, and so on.
Yeah. There's things I like about things that I don't, because, again, you want to avoid situations where, like, if you are a truly bad team, you should at least end up pretty high up. Where, like, if you're a team that just barely missed the playoffs, you probably have the best record against all those teams. And if you barely miss the playoffs, you also maybe incentivize a team that is on the edge of the playoffs to tank to miss the playoffs because they have that record. We could be in the play-in
tournament, or we could get that really good draft.
Yeah, get the number one overall pick or top 3 pick. Like
we're not good enough to compete for a championship, we can make the playoffs, or we could get the top guy coming out of the draft class.
Yeah, so that's you want to limit the ways that people can game the system. I do like the thinking, though, of that idea. Like, I do want to mention that because it plays to the idea that I have loved with some of these ideas with the draft, is to find a way to incentivize winning among teams. Like, there are ones
make games in March and April and even parts of February. Make those still important.
Yeah.
Make them valuable. Because there was some discussion about once you're officially eliminated, then it's how many wins can you accumulate after that.
Yeah, or like freezing the lottery odds as of a certain point, like where that latter one doesn't really like directly incentivize winning, where like the once you're eliminated, like how many wins you get, like that is a direct incentive to winning, whereas the other you just don't have an incentive to lose. So there's some nuance there, but just any system you can come up with, and this idea from David Locke, it's an idea that I hadn't thought of, but it's along the lines of thinking that I like. Although you got to play test it in your head a little bit, you can come up with some flaws, and at the end, all of these different systems are going to have positives and negatives. You just got to figure out which one has the fewest negatives, or the negatives that you can just live with. And that's the thing that the NBA is going to have to do. I don't really envy their job, because I'll be honest, whatever idea they come up with, I don't think people are going to like it.
There will be flaws, and there are highly intelligent people. If these ownership groups and these management groups
are they highly intelligent? We've seen some of the traits these people do.
No, well, they'll find ways to game the system to help bend things in their favor.
Yeah, but like you just try and limit the ways in which you can game the system, because every draft, lottery, or whatever system that I've seen, there's a way that I've thought of that you can game the system outside of just being it a flat lottery for literally every single team, or eliminating the draft entirely. Like the only ways to eliminate people gaming the system for higher draft picks is if you just remove any sort of control by the teams as to which spot they pick.
8632 texting in, no lottery, reverse standings is the superior draft format.
Yeah, it's worked for the NBA or the NFL, excuse me. Like, I think where it's a little different is that there are a lot more games, with the NFL. And if you get caught in trying to tank in the NFL, like, people already sometimes accuse teams of tanking, but like, I don't know, there's just kind of a culture of we definitely don't do that here.
Yeah, well, and one player, if you get a great quarterback, he can definitely alter the trajectory of a football franchise. But it's so different in basketball, where the one player can have such a dramatic change in a team's future for the next
drafting LeBron James and Victor Wembanyama has a much bigger impact on your team than drafting Cam Newton or Jared Goff. or Matt Stafford. I'm listing off actual number 1 overall picks, by the way. A reminder that most number 1 overall picks in the NFL actually don't end up panning out nearly as well as people
work as
they always say, we have a franchise quarterback and a Hall of Famer. And it's like, no, you picked Jared Goff.
The great number 1 pick ends up going to a bad franchise.
Yeah, like most of the best quarterbacks tend to be picked in the middle or back end of the first
but a
round.
bad franchise.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the way it usually goes. Like Peyton Manning is like the one number 1 overall pick that is like clearly panned out for his team that I can at least think of off the top of my head. If anybody else can think of one, though. But we've got to take a break here. We're due for one. So we'll shift. We'll talk a little bit about of the Jazz specifically. They're in their last 10 games trying to finish off their tank. What do we want to see from them in these last 10 games other than 10 losses?
Yeah, and are you okay with Seattle and Las Vegas as potential expansion targets?
Yeah. So we'll talk about that next here on the Full Court Press. Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Make sure to check out Young Power Sports Logan. They got the best repair shop in the valley. Oh, we have a new liner. I was looking at the old one.
New stuff.
Saturday, April 4th, 10 to noon. It's the Young Power Sports Easter egg hunt. Isn't this the second year they've done it? I feel like I remember them doing this last year too.
Maybe.
That's free
fun.
family fun, 4 age groups, and a $100 golden egg in each age group.
Are they going to have an adult age group so you and I can go? Find the golden egg.
I've seen jokes where it's like, playing, I can't remember which way they present it, but either Easter egg hunts prepared them to play golf and find their golf ball in the grass, or like vice versa. Like, how are you so good at Easter egg hunts? And it just shows a person walking around the rough trying to find their ball. It's like, that's how I'm good at it.
That's it.
Because I know how to find a golf ball in the middle of the weeds. So we're talking about the Utah Jazz. We have a few texts I want to get to, although 2603 saying, what if they had some combination of designated games that count points and wins plus the overall record? Maybe 33% of the season games take into account winning them, and 33 are straight up, and the other 33% are competitive games that can be adjusted throughout the year based on overall team performances. I think you lost me a little bit there.
So maybe like the NBA Cup, something like that,
Like
where
some
designated teams or designated games on the schedule have some kind of a point system that help you with your draft status.
Yeah. And then like don't tell anybody what games they are. Just like randomize them throughout your schedule.
Guess what? This is what happened. These were the games.
That'd be nice. Just surprised. Then you start getting into accusations of rigging things. And that already happens now with gambling.
Yeah. Real quick, the NBA, the other big announcement today is that they voted to move forward with exploring expansion.
Yeah.
They've kind of discussed it off and on over the years, but today they're like, yep, we are going to legitimately explore this. And it's not totally like, yes, we're going to expand to Seattle and Las Vegas. We could expand up to 2. We could expand to just 1, or we could not expand. They're going to start exploring those options. Certainly, I don't think there's really anybody else that stands out other than Las Vegas and Seattle.
I think that they're going to expand to both. I think it's going to be 2. I know that they're leaving their options open, and they should be approaching it in that manner. You don't want to lock yourself in and start making promises before you figure things out. And there are things that are kind of worrying because if you're an NBA owner, there is a chance for you to lose money in expansion. Because I know there's a big, initial fee that you're going to get money, but then you have to split TV revenue 1 in 32 as opposed to 1 in 30.
Right. Yes.
So unless the TV money goes way up with the new franchises, which it can, and so that may end up helping to offset that, but there is a possibility that these owners or governors, I guess they want to be called, or somebody got mad about calling them owners, but yeah, there's a possibility for them to be against it for that reason. Because again, for a lot of these owners, this is an investment. Obviously, some of them love basketball, but for a lot of people that are in ownership with sports, it is about the money. Like sports ownership is basically a money printing machine.
Yeah.
So you don't want to jeopardize that, especially when you have ownership groups and things like that, where there are people that aren't, if you're the sole owner with an NBA team, it's like, okay, I won't make $400 million, I'll make $380 million. Boo-hoo.
Yeah.
But for ownership groups where there can be smaller pieces of the pie, like there are people who are really wanting to protect that asset. But yeah, another key aspect to this, well, actually, we got to take another break. So why don't I'll say this, another key aspect of this debate is there enough talent for NBA expansion? Are there enough talented players to fill out 32 competitive teams?
Yeah, Tracy McGrady, one of the more vocal people, saying that there's not. That there isn't enough good basketball being played right now in the NBA to justify adding even more.
Yeah.
But is he right?
Yeah, we'll get to that next. We'll wrap up the show coming up next here on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan, here on the Full Court Press. Welcome on back to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan, streaming online at 1069thefan.com and on YouTube, The Fan KLGN. Went into the break teasing the topic of does the NBA, or are there enough talented NBA level basketball players to fill out 32 rosters as opposed to just 30?
Did you see the text from 8632?
I did. You mentioned Tracy McGrady being a vocal proponent of it. 8632 chiming in to say, I'm not going to listen to a player who played a large amount of their career in the dead ball era about how much talent is in the league right now. There's way too much talent and we need expansion.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth. It's hard for me right now to really feel like... right now I'm on the side of the fence that says there's not enough talent. But I think that my opinion is clouded by the fact that there are so many teams that are in the tank race right now. There's so many teams in the NBA who are not trying to win games. So it's hard to really see like there's great talent in the NBA. There's a lot of teams that are not really trying to win a lot of games. They're developing young talent, but is that young talent really exciting? There show flashes, but there's also a lot of guys who aren't playing. So if everybody was healthy and everybody played and everybody coached to win, I might have a different opinion. But right now, as the NBA currently sits, I'm on Tracy McGrady's side.
Yeah.
But if Adam Silver and the owners figure out how to adjust tanking and eliminate that, then maybe we will see more interesting and more competitive basketball and prove to me that there is enough talent out there.
Yeah, see, my counter argument is kind of twofold. One, where you already kind of touched on it in that you say that there are so many teams that are bad right now. It's because they're not trying to be good.
Yeah.
There are a lot of good players sitting out. They are trying to be bad. If they were actually trying to be good, and this may go to where they have to fix tanking to adjust this, where maybe you shouldn't expand until you can fix tanking because you don't want to just add two more teams, one of which might just join the tanking and maybe the other one. I mean, it can be tough for expansion teams to get on their feet. In some sports, we've seen them get on their feet pretty quickly, but historically, it's typically been kind of hard. But to me, there's that. But there's also the fact that I would look at examples that we can kind of see around here with the Utah Jazz and even with former Utah State players, where the Utah Jazz have been pulling up guys that are viewed as completely washed, or they have no business being in the NBA because they just aren't talented enough. So like the Jazz are signing this player and you think, oh, they're clearly tanking because they're signing Simone Fontecchio or they're signing Chris Dunn to a 10-day contract. Well, then it turns out those guys get to play NBA minutes and it turns out, oh yeah, they're actually good enough to play in the NBA.
Compete.
Are those two players stars? Not necessarily, but they're NBA caliber players.
Yeah, Utah was buying low, selling high, showcasing players that had been forgotten, giving them a chance so they could flip them for future assets.
Yeah, and former Utah State players like Sam Merrill and Neemias Queta wallowed in the G League for half a decade each, basically. And then the second that they actually got a chance to play regular NBA minutes, well, it turns out Neemias Queta is a starting center on a contender in the East, and Sam Merrill is also a starter on a contending team in the East. Like, Fontecchio and Chris Dunn, they're kind of still maybe bench players and role guys toward the back of the rotation. But Sam Merrill and Neemias Queta, well, again, those two aren't necessarily stars. They are NBA caliber starters for contending teams. And those were players that, like a year and a half ago, Sam Merrill, a year and a half or maybe 2.5 years now at this point, he was signing a 10-day contract as his last gasp to even stay in the NBA.
True. A
year and a half ago, Neemias Queta was getting a ring after basically not having played the entire season. And once the very second they got a chance to prove themselves, they're playing. And those guys are not the only people who are capable of doing that. I mean, I've mentioned 4 examples, and those are just the ones that I happen to know off the top of my head. There are numerous players who, if you actually gave them a chance, so open up essentially like 36 more roster spots, like 15, on like 12 on the active. You got 3 more for your main roster, and then you've got 3 two-way slots. So 36 new roster spots. They'll get filled by players who can play in the NBA. Now, are there enough stars to go around? maybe not, but you start maybe, there's potential for more parity where it becomes a little bit harder. I know some people don't like the fact that it's really hard for teams to keep their super teams together, but I like teams being able to, you have more places for stars to go, and that just helps there be more parity.
Well, and in the NIL era, you're going to have better players coming out of college basketball.
Yeah.
Because, you're always going to have great freshmen, that potential. There are going to be other good players who decide to stay a little bit longer to improve their development and improve their financial situation.
Yeah.
Who then ultimately go to the NBA. And so you're getting back to where the NBA used to require players to be in college for a while before they could come and go pro. Then it shifted to you can come right out of high school, and then it became a hot mess. But it's getting back to players coming out of college are more refined. They are better players. And so there are going to be more options available from that pool of resources.
And you've also got, because we're getting roughly the same number of college players as we ever have, but there's more international players. Some who come through the college ranks first, but many who are just coming straight from international. So there are more and more players, more prospects, better prospects than there have ever been. And so that's where I think there is enough talent to expand. Will it be a little rough at first? Yes, it could be rough because you got to find those players who are actually capable. But I think there is enough talent for the NBA to expand with 2 more teams. So,
yeah. Hey, stay tuned for tomorrow's show. We have plans to get into some Utah State football. Their spring practice is underway, and we're going to have a conversation with Bronco Mendenhall tomorrow.
Make sure to stay tuned.